Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Future of BizTech. I'm your host, JC Granger, and I have another fantastic guest with us on the show today. And listen, if you end up loving this episode, please show your love and appreciation by following this podcast wherever you're listening to it. And be sure to give it a 5-star review, preferably with some cool comments. That helps out the algorithms, because that is how other techies like you and I find cool podcasts like this. And today I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing the co-founder and COO of Bitcoin IRA, Kline. Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what does Bitcoin IRA do?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, JC. It's a real pleasure to be here with you and with your audience. My name is Kline. I started the company called Bitcoin IRA. We were the world's first platform that allowed clients to open, fund, and trade their retirement accounts with digital assets, first being Bitcoin. Originally from Colorado, and I hail from Sherman Oaks, California today.
No kidding. Colorado, well, because I'm in Denver. What part of Colorado are you from?
I grew up in Aurora, Eastern Plains, and then went to college in Boulder. I lived downtown by the stadium for a few years.
Wait, are you a Buff? Are you a Buffalo?
Yes, I am a Buff. No way, really? Go Buffs.
Go Buffs, and it's SCO Buffs now. I don't know if you're keeping up with the lingo.
Yeah, I heard the kids added an SK to it. I don't know.
SKO, they're like it's kind of like they were too lazy to say let's go, so they just said SCO, which is anyway. It's funny. I like it, but it's weird. You know, I think I'm too old for that. But
I wonder if they still take their keys out for third down. Do you remember that?
They do. Yeah, the jingle the keys. At least some things stay, which is good.
That's good. That's good.
I used to get little marks on my knuckles. You do it so hard, they end up cutting your fingers.
Well, you know how many lost keys there were every game too?
Oh, that's right. They just come flying off. All right, for the audience, if you know, you know, right? If you went to a Division I college school, there's always little traditions, at football games. Chris, that's hilarious. I had no idea. Okay, I guess we'll get back to the podcast now. So this is fascinating already, though. So when I heard about what you do, I was like, okay, this is interesting because people are going to have a lot of opinions on this, right? Whether they be educated or not. They're going to have opinions. There's risk factors that I'm sure that you've heard a million times of like, well, Bitcoin goes up and down so much. But let's get to that part later. Let's first talk about this. You provide this for employers to allow their employees or themselves to put these IRAs into that digital asset. That is, for one, that's innovative and really cool. I like it from that perspective alone. But who's your perfect client? So what kind of companies do you work with when you are, that you're partnering with and that are using this kind of service from you?
Yeah, I mean, it's usually fintech players, forward thinkers. Early on, we're a lot of the Palo Alto, a lot of groups we've worked with to make this a reality. You need to have a wallet, you got to have an exchange, you have to have a custodian, a bank. All of them right away, their employees were like, can we do this? And we found a way to make it possible for them. There's a lot of options for employers out there that are beyond just what happens most of the time. I'm an entrepreneur. So the last thing you're thinking about is, especially when it gets to the breakdown of payroll, the payroll taxes, the insurances, in California, there's so many of them. And then the 401k. And usually what it does, it gets tacked on. It's we got you all these healthcare options from A to B. And for your 401k, it's Hewitt or ADP Total Resource or Voya is another big one. And it's pretty traditional options. So employers can look at, a lot of times their employees just in general will open up a separate account and contribute to that. So that's one option, just letting them know it's there. The second is smaller companies that don't necessarily have 401ks or want an option alternative can look at simple IRAs. You structure one for your employees. They behave in the same way with contributions and things. But our ideal client is such a wide spectrum. And that's why, people call Bitcoin the revolution. I try to be a little bit less abrasive and I call it the evolution. And it's such a range of people. Early on, when we started this back in 2015, the first guys were super nerds. I call them my engine nerds. NASA scientists that retired or were still working, IBM guys, the guys that were on the cutting edge of things, of AI and machine learning that knew about crypto. But now it's across the board. We've got nurses from Wisconsin. We've got my family members all have one. It's a unique addition to an alternative for your retirement planning that a lot of people are interested in for a lot of different reasons.
Well, that's really cool. So let me ask you this then. When you hook up with I imagine you could do this for Fortune 500. You could do this for even kind of small to medium sized businesses, correct? It's really just an option that they could carry for their employees, right?
Yep.
So okay, let's get to the part that because I know we're gonna probably have to talk about this a lot, right? The risk factor. People watch Bitcoin shoot up crash, shoot up, crash. Now, listen, you only lose money when you sell. Right. So technically, if you hold, you haven't lost anything, right? That being said, and that's what IRAs kind of the entire premise of 401ks.
Exactly,
IRAs,
right.
yeah,
It
it
fits
is
the
to hold.
niche that you're not touching
It
this
is to
money
hold.
anytime soon.
But
Yep,
then,
exactly.
the question is this: like, what have you seen as the historical benefit? And let's get rid of any of the original people who accidentally bought Bitcoin when it was 0.01 cents and are trillionaires now. Let's get rid of them and let's just talk about like the last 5 years, let's say. In the last 5 years, if somebody had put in, maybe a third of their IRA over into a digital asset that managed, like you're saying, what could they have, what have they seen happen? And where do you see, that next couple of years, just from the point of view of just Bitcoin, maybe not the industry, but just Bitcoin?
So we actually have clients from 5 years ago, right? First one, entry price $250. He was actually the director of the U.S. Mint, former director of the U.S. Mint, Ed Moy. We worked with him in past occasions, and so he wanted to be the first. And he's held, and he just did a small contribution. You can put $67,000 a year based on your age to a retirement account. So he did that. And now it's upwards of 300,000. That's our beginnings. Obviously not pennies, right? Still in the dollars, actually hundreds of dollars. Moving forward, obviously there's waves of people that come into this because there is a FOMO factor that kicks in. But what most folks are really hyper focused on is the finiteness of Bitcoin. It's going to do a lot of cool things with payments across borders, as an alternative to other monetary instruments out there. But it's one of the only few we have available today that is truly finite. There will only be 21 million Bitcoin ever mined. And in the last year, the Federal Reserve has done like trillions of US dollars being added to the balance sheet. And folks are looking in that regard. And that's one of the driving factors that you see from these folks.
So, I mean, right now, as we're talking, where is Bitcoin roughly? Like, just what's the value of a Bitcoin
It's
right now?
just about 57,000. So it's
Okay.
about $9,000 off its all-time highs around 65,000, which it set earlier this year around April.
And you see these fluctuations in the market in the weeks or months, and they go big swings, right? And something can happen. China making regulations recently where they're like, nope, none of that, and it affects the market. Now, those data points will happen, but if you zoom out, ultimately, and I'm asking the question, but I'm saying it from almost an assumptive point of view because just from the logic. But tell me if I'm wrong. When you zoom out, and even with these certain data points in there, nobody can technically shut it down because it doesn't belong to any in particular institution, right? So that's the first part. So it's sustainable in the sense that no one can just turn it off, right? Okay, that's the first part. Second part is this: it's finite, and which means that eventually there's a supply and demand issue. So, in your opinion, then zooming out, regardless of these day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month fluctuations, is it safe to assume is it always just kind of always going up until it runs out, until everyone has all the Bitcoin? I mean, how does that work?
That's a good way. That's an interesting way to look at it. So first, our mantra in Bitcoin, one of the newer ones is when in doubt, zoom out. So you nailed half of it. When in doubt, zoom out, because you'll look at the daily aberrations. You'll can see weeks or months where it's down. September's are always rough. If you zoom out, it reminds you, oh yeah, this thing is up a lot over the last 5 years. It's beaten every instrument available, S&P, all those things. But when you say the way that when they look at that, what keeps that, I guess, intestinal fortitude at play is that there's a bigger picture happening here. And it's not when we just run out. It's actually the most divisible asset as well. So divisibility is huge. With gold, you can only divide it by ounces, right? Or quarter ounces. Maybe there's a 10th ounce out there or a gram. With real estate, it's houses, right? It's a full house usually that you're looking to invest in. With Bitcoin, it goes to the 11th decimal point. It's called a Satoshi. And I know it seems weird because we're of a generation, if we're all entrepreneurs, we're of a generation of stacking commas, right? We want to get one more comma in our bank account. But think the other way, beyond just 2 decimal points, the 50 cents, the 75 cents that we have to do with US dollars. But now you're looking at, to the 11th decimal point, a Satoshi could be something. You go to get lunch, it could cost a Satoshi someday. And we start, you think in that way. And in fact, they're already doing that, not quite to that level, actually to that level in El Salvador. Last month, it was announced, it's there now, their reserve currency. They're mining Bitcoin with their volcanic power. Talk about just disruption, right? They're taking something that has been a problem for them, and they're mining Bitcoin using the power, geothermal power of the volcanoes that are there. And so they're really taking a forward-facing approach to Bitcoin, while you have China that is like banning it, which it's China. Anything that shows revolution, democracy, people's choice, rights, that's what you're going to see come out of there. And lack of control. It's a state-controlled economy. And so you've got this cool dichotomy happening, which is also happening here in the US, but we're having a conversation about it, right? Here, US-wise, there's new regulation. We got a new SEC chair that actually is crypto-friendly, or at least crypto experience. But you've got a lot of folks eyeballing this space and wondering, how are we going to regulate it? The buzzword is, how is it going to get regulated? Truthfully speaking, Bitcoin has a larger microscope and a tighter microscope on it than almost every other financial class out there. As an entrepreneur running a business, if anybody's in banking or finance, you know your KYC, AML standards. Ours are 10 times as robust. We go back even into criminal background activity, which no other bank does. And that's just for the standard of what regulation is. Where it's headed, at the end of the day, what's driving it? A lot of guys are making a lot of money in crypto, and the government wants their piece. That's really the driving factor. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah, let's call it what it is, right? And
spade.
And it is, and there's other sides to it. I mean, not to be super, critical of it, because there are things to consider, that if you don't have regulation, if you don't have transparency, there are certain types of people in the world that are going to exploit that, right? So there is a good actual moral.
Regulation, we applaud it. Just so you know, just to clarify, I applaud it. We need the guardrails. I was around in 2017 when even Paris Hilton had some type of token that she was offering. It was chaos. It was like .com era. Everybody had a website. Even companies that didn't exist had websites. And that's now behind us. And you see that the process by which people are getting into this space is in a much more guardrailed type fashion, especially here in the US. And
honestly, it's for the better of the industry, because nobody who has Bitcoin wants it to be so dramatic. They like the highs, but no one's going to like the lows. You need something to be stable, right? Stability is really the long-term play. So let's talk about the benefit to businesses specifically. So walk me through, like, why would a small business, let's say a business 1 to 5 million gross a year, right? Maybe it's a software company, right? We like tech. Let's talk software.
Okay.
So software company making, let's say 2 million a year, and they've got, 15 employees, something like that. Okay. What is the benefit for them offering this? There's obviously a benefit where it gives options to employees. That's awesome for that. But is there, what other benefits are there? Is there a way that the employer itself somehow benefits, either financially or structurally or tax-wise? And then other than just the benefit of being able to offer something cool to their people?
I mean, the big driving factor is employee satisfaction, which is a big deal these days. I mean, now that we're remote, the world is flat, especially with software engineers. I'm sure everybody knows it got a lot more competitive really fast, because you didn't need to live in Palo Alto to get paid what you wanted to get paid. You could live anywhere. And it opened up a whole new generation, I think, of software engineers that are now available across the US map without having to be in a particular place. So it gives you a competitive edge there, that you can say that some of these are alternatives that are available with your retirement savings that we match with. Obviously, corporate matching has always been a piece of what companies use as far as their tax strategy, and everybody's is different. So I try not to get, but there's obviously a good reason why we offer these benefits to our employees. And then beyond that, a lot of businesses that we work with, including our own, has put Bitcoin onto the balance sheet. So, and it's crazy to think about, right? But obviously Elon Musk led the way with like 1.5 billion earlier this year. MicroStrategy has done a series of buys. They're almost well over $1 billion on their balance sheet. And even a small company like ourselves, we're able to take and have a little piece there, because even for this year, what we accrued across the year has grown. And that means hey, it helps the bottom line. It's another strategy to grow your business. Now, obviously, if you're in startup mode, and I've been here, where when we actually bought the domain for Bitcoin IRA, I remember having an argument about, man, we've never paid that much for a domain before. It was worth it, obviously. So if you're ever in that position and you're thinking about something like that, buy the domain. But when you're sitting and you're making bills by bills, either keeping yourself cash flow positive months or weeks at a time, possibly not the best move, because you don't need to tell your employees, hey, we can't make payroll because Bitcoin's down 20%. And the third thing is, I've just started to see this scratch the surface, is obviously celebrities. You've heard of NFL players and other NBA players demanding a portion of their contract with crypto. It's starting to happen with employees too. There are mechanisms. Our platform has abilities to plug folks into these things that your employer or employee could say, hey, I want 10% of my paycheck to go into Bitcoin or be paid to me as Bitcoin. And that's really cool. If you really,
but do you see people doing it because they believe that zoom out that it will. Okay, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
we grew up that real estate never went down until it did, right? But
Yeah.
even when it did, then it came back.
Yep.
If you zoom out even farther out of '09, right? I mean, granted, that was not good for anybody really, except for people who already had a ton of money who got good deals on buying stuff up. But if you were to zoom out, technically speaking, real estate still does hold. It still does increase in value. That is still the number one way to
Capital
gain.
intensive though now.
Yeah.
That's where it's
Well,
prohibition
but this is
is
what. So I'm
happening.
going to relate this to
Yeah.
the Bitcoin question. Is Bitcoin the new real estate, where because it's finite, and because if you zoom out big enough, right? If you're a day trader, it's a whole different story. But if you're someone who's doing the long haul investment, in your opinion, is it something that is a smarter bet than putting it into a high yield bond or a savings account that is traditional for people to put their money aside in? Do you recommend that people say, all right, and if so, what percentage of their savings should they put in there safely, and what should they not? Like, should they go all in, or be like, okay, we're not trying to go crazy and go all in, but you should put 10% or whatever? Like, what is your advice just from your experience of how much should be put into things like this, of a concept like a Bitcoin IRA?
For everybody, it's different, right? We all have our individual lives that we live and our individual bills and creditworthiness. But you nailed it on the head as far as, is this another alternative to those things because of the prohibition to get in? People are, especially younger generations, are getting priced out of this market. It's almost impossible to build enough wealth that you can get the down payment, get the financing, get the costs, and then survive the mortgage. And first, basically, you're going to have an empty house because you probably don't have any furnishings, things like that. So this is a different way of doing things and looking at, okay, I have built up some savings. It's not enough for X, but it's enough for Y. As far as our platform, we're not financial advisors, so we don't throw out like percentages that make sense. I can tell you, aggregate wise, most folks are in the 5 to 20% range, depending upon their risk tolerance. I've seen clients that have gone all in. One of our early clients left his job at Intel. I kid you not. He found out he had a 401k that was with Fidelity, and he found out he couldn't touch it until he reached 59 and a half or quit his job. And he looked at himself in the mirror and said, well, it's a long ways to 59 and a half, but I can quit tomorrow and I've got this. And he already wanted to be an entrepreneur. He was like ready at that stage of his career. So he did it. Yeah. I remember saying, this is crazy. And we're still friends today. And now I think he turned 300 into probably north of 5 million. And he was able to help finance over time his development of his small business. So, everybody's got that moment in time where they make a decision on what they're going to do. But getting off zero is the bigger conversation. Having zero exposure to Bitcoin, that's when you're going to be kicking yourself a few years down the road.
Got it. So let's talk about this, and let's talk about the platform itself, your platform.
Okay.
How does a company interact with it? Can they sign themselves up? Is it completely, walk through, or is it part service where you have to have someone on your team, get them in there, paperwork and stuff? Like, just what is that user interaction with your platform?
The first question we always ask folks to look at is, how much are your employees actually using your 401k plan? Because you'd be surprised when you actually look at the data of who's using it, why are they using it? And usually they do a survey with their clients, with their employees, like, hey, why aren't you guys using this? Because that's usually the standard, is they're not using it. We have another epidemic or pandemic happening since way before COVID, which is we have 60% of Americans, according to a recent survey about 2 years ago with Yahoo, not prepared or haven't even started for retirement yet. And even when corporate match is sitting in front of them, they're not making the decision to do it. And some of that lacks just something they're interested in. And they'd rather have the money in their bank account to do emergency funds with, or other things they're dealing with in their lives. And so once you do that, then you know where you stand. If it's not really popular, then you can encourage employees that aren't using it. You can contribute one of two ways. You can use your 401k, or you can use just a standard IRA. And that's where you get a whole bunch of clients, employees that say, great, I'd love to do that. We point them in the right direction. We set them up as kind of like a group within our community, so that there's a representative that's there to help any of the people that need help with their accounts. And they come in as, I came from XYZ company. So we all know how they operate. The second layer is, if you're small or don't have anything, or it's just really not being used and you're thinking maybe we need to change it up, simple IRAs is a strategy they would use, where the group will create something. They can make contributions as a match, and then each employee has their own. And as long as it's there for 2 years, then it can start being moved. So you're not as locked up as 401ks. 401ks are locked up as either you're in as an employee or you reach that age of 59 and a half. And then the third, it's a little bit more robust. And there's groups, ourselves can help you, and there's other groups that are out there. You go to your existing 401k provider, and you can create an addendum to your operating agreement of your 401k, where you can actually slide in the option to have for employees to have bridge accounts to other places. Self-directed bridges is kind of what they're usually called. So now that mechanism is in place, any of your employees can say, I want to do this. Money moves from the 401k over to the sub account and through the bridge. And now they log in and they've got complete control either through the mobile app or the desktop to see their funds and then trade between any of the digital currencies that are available on the platform.
That's really cool. I like that. So let's talk about, how are you getting the word out there? So I'm a marketing guy. You know that, we've talked about it before. I always have to ask a marketing question because it fascinates me. So how is Bitcoin IRA even? I mean, you're on a podcast. That's one. Okay, we know one. All right, you're doing PR. Great. What other methods are you using that have either been successful, maybe not successful, as far as getting the word out about you guys to the right people?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you don't have a business until you get on at least a couple of stages of a ladder and yell from a megaphone that it's there. People have to know it's there. Early on, press was key. You could drop a press release and you'd have 50 to 100 people call you. And then we had these really interesting where we did the right thing, right things come. We started growing our client base and people would hear about us that we're with other investment groups. There's so many of them out there. You can Google investment information. You see ads out the wazoo of join our subscription. Well, some of those guys found us, actually opened an account and did a dissertation on the experience and why they did it and what it could mean. And that was crazy because as an entrepreneur, I walked in like on a Tuesday and as everybody popped out of their cubes, they're like, we have a problem. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? They're like, phone hasn't stopped ringing for like 6 hours. There's like 27 people on hold right now. And I was like, okay. That was a new evolution, just natural growth that happens. Yeah. And sometimes when you got a cool product, you get lucky, right? We had a cool product. It was new and innovative. Beyond that, obviously, you got to spend money with the big boys. You got to go over to the things. You got to spend money at Google and those things. And what's nice is that as you spend enough money, they take care of you. I've learned over the years, but you have to reach those thresholds, right? Yeah. And then outreach like this, I do a lot of educational seminars. I just go, like they invite me. I was at a young professionals organization in Beverly Hills about 3 weeks ago. And these are players and I just went up and education, understanding, a lot of people don't even understand the history of money. Where did money start? How's it evolved over the years? And how does Bitcoin fit into that? And then having a human being. So almost all the other businesses that are in our sector, they are really heavy tech driven. We came from a background that we understood the paramount of customer service when it came to people's retirement monies. They're saving for the long term. Some of them are moving. Our average client moves $65,000 from another 401k or an IRA. So they're moving a big sum of money to do this. Having a human being to talk to is a pivotal difference we've made, and it helps build our business. Well, I know a lot of businesses will say, "Oh, half of our clients come from referrals from other clients," and that's probably BS. We truly have 30% of our clients are coming every month from other clients that have experienced us, had success with us, and they share it with their.
Well, I believe that just because it's such an innovative idea. I can't imagine you have a million competitors that are doing Bitcoin IRA accounts.
We get these waves after holidays. So everybody gets together for 4th of July, and all of a sudden you get this wave of new, because just naturally people are together talking about things. Bitcoin's in the news. Its volatility is what drives it's almost a sex appeal to it. It's got sizzle. It's something to chat about and gets people. And then when you do the math and people that got in early, really, it sounded cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs 4 years ago. Bitcoin and an IRA, are you nuts? And I remember the banks and the regulators saying, are you sure, kid? And I was like, yes, people want this. And they have. We have over 100,000 users now and created our own industry. We made our own competition because it got big enough. They showed up.
Well, that keeps you on your toes. Like, it's like Tesla. Yep. There's a reason why they let some things be public. And I think whatever your opinion of Elon Musk is, I thought it was an interesting play because really, if your competition can start catching up, it forces you to keep pushing that edge and keep innovating. Otherwise, you get complacent, and then somebody will leapfrog you. So I think it's
our
smart.
saying here is, what are we innovating today?
That's good. I like that.
And it may be something as simple as somebody comes in from the service team and says, these two things aren't connecting on the mobile app because of XYZ reason. And how are we going to innovate our solution to that? Because we're on the cutting edge. Nobody's ever offered 24/7 trading. We were the first to do it in 2018. It was crazy. I remember sitting there. We did it like just around November 1st. So we're about the 5-6 year anniversary of the first 24/7 trade on the platform. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting there on Christmas and being like, please, somebody trade. We gave you this tool, use it. And I remember my daughter's opening her gifts, and all of a sudden my phone starts buzzing. And I'm like, oh my God, it's happening. And it was, and that's why you build those things. And then we listen to our clients. Innovation really comes from what are people asking for. And that's where mobile apps have come from, new products, new features. Once you get to a certain level, your clients will help drive your roadmap if you listen.
That's actually really smart. And let's talk about roadmaps here. So I have a two-part question for you. The future of biz tech, that's the title. So we got to talk about the future. First, I want to ask about the industry, whether it be Bitcoin or specifically software, platforms that deal with it. And even just like you said, retirement accounts and how that plays. Where do you see the next 5 or 10 years in your industry based on either regulation or innovation or technology? Just like if you're having a beer with a buddy, like I swear, man, I swear this is going to happen. You just wait. You just watch. What is that you say in that moment?
My big thing right now is watch South America. And that's in the next 2 years. We had this whole conversation in the 60s and 50s about communism and Southeast Asia, right? That's why we were in Vietnam. It was called domino theory. If one state falls, then the next state falls. Like El Salvador is having amazing success with this. It's going to take some time for them to prove its viability for its population base. But they're already using it. People are buying McDonald's and Starbucks and paying bills they're doing things there. Brazil is next. They're just about to. And watch how it can spread like wildfire there. It's important to remember Bitcoin is not an American thing. It's a human thing. This is a way that these currencies can be used in other sectors. Africa is another really interesting place to watch because it's so underbanked. They have all these telecommunication towers everywhere, but they have a very few banking infrastructure. Another place that you'll see it. Europe is already this melting pot, right? European Union, European Central Bank, this whole concept, and they're very forward thinking. So I would watch. It'd be very interesting to see how this thing spreads across the globe, and it spreads across the U.S. The type of people that are looking at it and the people you're going to be hearing about it from. I always sit back because obviously being the Bitcoin guy for years now, every Thanksgiving, Christmas, it's always a conversation. So I learned to sit back and watch how people that at one time thought it was crazy are now have their Coinbase account opened up and they're trading and they're learning things and it's beyond just an asset that's worth $1 today that you can sell for $1 tomorrow, $2 tomorrow.
Sure.
It's what are these tokens doing? Ethereum and the smart contracts and what dApps are is a revolution to internet. Everybody complains about privacy on the internet, right? We all feel like Big Brother's listening. We think about buying a couch and all of a sudden we see 7 ads about buying a couch. I'm a marketing guy. And Ethereum can build up more privacy for us in a new era of what the internet is and how we ask for our advertisement. We don't get fed our advertisement. We put those things out there based upon smart contracts. And with voting, there's a lot of cool applications that you're going to start seeing. Okay, Bitcoin is not just money and a digital currency is not just money, but it's actually, this could possibly impact our lives. Yeah. And make things that are difficult a lot easier if we just use the blockchain technology and application that's out there.
Yeah, and it's funny. So I like what you said earlier about El Salvador. It is, I think that when they launched it, they didn't do the best job. I remember reading about
a little choppy.
Yeah, a little choppy in the beginning, but whatever. Again, zoom out, right? Like, what's the long term? But what you said about Africa is what I think is something I've been watching. How I feel like Africa is so primed to leapfrog more than anyone. I think South America can make great use of it, and it can. But there's so many different things happening there. I think that Africa is where I would watch personally, just standpoint, and they've got the population to that. Like here's the thing: if they can just build the car, they've got all the gas in the world. You know what I mean, right? And so I feel like if that hits there, if they figure it out, you could see Africa leapfrog in ways that nobody probably found even possible. And because of not just Bitcoin, but blockchain in general, right? Like you were saying, like it's not just what Bitcoin is; it's the foundation of how it operates that can be used in so many different ways. So let's now talk about your company's future. Okay. So my audience likes to hear some inside scoops. So what do you have? Give us the juice, man. What do you got for us? Right. What's coming up that no one else knows about?
This year. We did the first earn program in Q1. So people are earning interest on Bitcoin sitting in their retirements, which is awesome.
Wait.
6% on cash they can do. So that one's done. Mobile app came out this year, was awesome. What we've got coming in the next 2 weeks is we right now have about 10 to 15 assets available. And that's because the industry's been growing slowly, but in a couple of weeks, we'll be expanding that to 65 to 70 available digital assets to buy and invest with. And that opens up what we were just talking about, all these applications that are doing something revolutionary in their own sector, and ability for you to say, hey, I kind of want to be a part of that. That's really cool what they're doing. And it's kind of like the next evolution of Kickstarter in a lot of ways, because that's what these companies are doing. They're using tokens, they're using communities and technology to do something different than has been done before. So I'm excited. There's some really cool ones on there. But yes, we'll be, I guess, 6xing the available assets for investment on our platform.
So when you say assets, you mean like Dogecoin, for example? Like that's another
Doge. There's Cardano and Link already on there. We just rolled those out kind of quietly a couple weeks ago. But it'll be all those different types of tokens or cryptocurrencies. There's 1,400 in the space plus. So it's not all of them, but at least it's this next generation of the players.
That's really cool. So it gives employees more options, which makes them happier. And that gives, and like, I mean, again, it's a competitive market right now. It's hard to find labor in certain industries, so this could be a way that they help entice employees in. So that could be really cool. So let me ask you a personal question now, right? What did you want to do when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up? And maybe this is it. But if it's not, how did it get here? Right? Like what did child Chris Kline want?
I wanted to be a senator.
Really? You still could. You literally still could.
I know I could, and that's enough. But I think that honestly, our country's going to miss out on a lot of great leaders, because when you think about it from a leadership standpoint and where you're at, do you really want to put yourself and your family through what it takes to be in politics today? It's not what it was when I was a kid. I mean, I was born under Reagan, but I've studied all of them. So yeah, I wanted to be a senator. I ran for like every public office or office in school. Otherwise, I crushed it. I was so good at campaigning. And I even worked on a few political campaigns out of college. And that's where it turned me the other way, because I saw under the belly of that beast, and it wasn't what I would. It just kind of, so that's where I did a little reset in my early 20s. Obviously, I had a business degree, international finance, and I knew I didn't want to work for corporate America forever. When I was growing up, the average median income in like Denver was 41,000. I was like, well, I got to at least make 100 grand, so that'll be good. This is when we were kids, right? Yeah. So different now. And I took a jump at 26, 25, sold all my worldly possessions, bought a one-way ticket to California, and packed one suitcase. I ran in serendipitously to my now partners, other serial entrepreneurs. And just embrace the moment of, hey, I've got no roots. I've got no risk. I mean, the worst thing, I always had $200 underneath the mattress at my motel that I lived in for a year that I could take a bus back home. Like that was my ticket home, man. Basically. And that all worked out. But where I think I'm headed in the future, it's interesting because entrepreneurs, there's a lot of different styles of them. I know some that are very successful and some just can't get enough, right? That victory of building something, innovating something new. They'll move on to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. I was talking to one of our 11th client last night. We're friends. He calls himself number 11. And he's like, what do you want to do in the next 5 years? If this grows to a place where there's an exit or an IPO, who knows what will be? I can't even. With Bitcoin, you can't think that far ahead. It's just, you'll zoom out later, but you don't zoom out while you're in it. But I kind of want to go be a teacher and like a coach at a high school in like middle America. I think that would just be fun for the later part of life. And because, a lot of teachers were involved in me, even though you don't think about it in the moment, you look back, and I still have relationships with several of them from high school days, even back into the middle school days. And they have an impact. And that's another place where you can really build the future. And fortunately, because I had success in business, it'll be a different type of teacher in a lot of ways. So maybe instead of being a senator in my later years, I might just go be a teacher. Well,
I think you'd do better for the world than being a senator at this point anyway, with how things are going. I think you'd have a better spot maybe in the afterlife too.
I really like that question, by the way, JC. That's an awesome question. I bet that one gets all your.
I got a few to choose from. I got a few interesting ones. That one just piques my own curiosity. Well, Chris, let me ask this: how can anyone listening? How can they get to the website? How can they reach you personally if they need to? If they're talking about like big deals and partnerships?
Yeah, you can. First place is just download the app. Honestly, so easy. You're probably on your phone already. You go to the App Store, search Bitcoin IRA, download it. It's got a cool orange egg because it's your nest egg of retirement in Bitcoin. And once you're there, you can fill out some information. That'll get you on in touch with one of our account executives that can guide you in the right direction. A lot of folks will just start with their own, like, hey, I got to do $7,000 this year. Let me just feel what this looks like, experience it. And then that's where, once you have a relationship, we start talking about, you bring up your employees and what they're looking for. And then we can kind of dissect what makes the most sense. Is it worth it? Do you have so many people and so much money sitting at ADP that it's worth it to build that bridge account and go through those steps? It's not expensive. It's just a tenuous process. Or would a simple make sense, or just educating your employees? Hey, we went to Bitcoin IRA. Our CEO opened an account. They're offering this special for all of our employees that want to open up an account, because we're expanding the offering for more and more folks looking at it.
Can people reach you via email or LinkedIn or anything like that if they need
For
to?
me personally, LinkedIn is my jam. That's usually where folks find me. It's
all right.
And that way we get to know a little bit about each other. I get so many chats. I try to keep up with them. But message me there, and then I'll get you my cell and we can connect and talk more.
Awesome. So again, bitcoinira.com, or download the app, has a little orange egg, like you said, or Chris Kline with a K on LinkedIn. And for everyone listening,
Kline, it's Kline.
There's
multiple ways you can spell Kline, I guess. I hear
that's true, because there's like EI or IE. Yeah, okay, yeah. I could. So for everyone listening out there, again, if you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Give it the 5-star rating, put in some cool comments so other techies like us can find it and enjoy learning about all the amazing and helpful B2B softwares on the market today. Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. And I actually look forward to talking to you after this, especially since you're a fellow buff and you piqued my interest, even for our company, with what you got to do. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot, JC, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Bye-bye.